Welcome to the Brouhaha with Dale McKee and Marshall Wood. Two sports talking sports with those in the know on the Brouhaha Show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brouhaha. Big weekend in sports, Dale. A lot of fun this weekend. What were you up to this weekend? Did you have a good one?
Well, I was really anticipating Saturday's football games because, we had Georgia and Arkansas, and we had Ole Miss and Alabama, and we had A&M and Mississippi State, and there was a couple other games that I just kind of glanced at, a little bit. I watched a little bit of Michigan for a second there, since the Georgia game was kind of a blowout there, and so that's kind of what I did, and of course, unfortunately, I watched the last few minutes of the Saints game yesterday, and that didn't turn out well. But basically, except for maybe my favorite high school team, probably didn't have a good football weekend. But I was glad of Mississippi State going over to Aggie Land and upsetting the number 15 team in the country. Some people call that a signature win, but they did demolish LSU last year in that opening game. But I had a good weekend anyway.
I got to be careful with this, and I'm going to go back a little bit in time to last week's show. I want to ask, have you ever seen Dumb and Dumber, Dale? Do you know that movie?
No, but I've seen some people walking around Waynesburg that I would identify as that.
Well, you're looking at one of them. Last week I talked about, I'm going to preface this with talking about Dumb and Dumber in a little minute. There was two characters in there. One of them was dumb, one of them was dumber. I don't know which one was which, but there was like Lloyd and Harry. Mm-hmm. And Lloyd was chasing this rather attractive young lady throughout the movie, and he asked her at the end of the movie, he said, tell me, is there a chance, what's the chance of a guy like me getting together with a girl like you? And she said, well, I got to be honest with you, Lloyd, it's 1,000,000 to 1. And he lit up and smiled from ear to ear, and he said, so you're telling me there's a chance? Last week when I was talking about that chance, I was a Lloyd Christmas. I was Dumb and Dumber. I was saying, so you're telling me a chance? Well, doesn't look like it worked out too well for the Rebels this past weekend. So it doesn't look like they did have a chance. However we wanted to define it, it was exciting for about one drive, and then it was over.
Well, really on that one drive, to me, the key play on that drive was when Corral threw the ball out of bounds, and they called him for what's that called? Downing. What's that called when you throw the ball away?
Intentional grounding.
Intentional grounding. Excuse me. And so I thought that was a key play because it kind of put them back a little bit, and then they came up just inches short on that fourth down, which their third time. But honestly, and looking back at that game, I don't get into it with coaches because they sit in there and watch film for 24/7 during the week, but I really don't know. Ole Miss's defense is improved over last year, but I don't think you can give Alabama a short field twice and not pay for it. And Saban was trying to make a point with his defense, and one thing he said after the game I thought was very interesting, listening to his radio show. He said the difference between this year and last year is we decided not to make substitutes. And what he meant by that, in passing situations, you put certain players in. Running plays, you put certain situations in. If you think Ole Miss is going to run it on 3rd and 1, you put a new group in. If you think they're going to pass it on 3rd and 8, then you put another group in. They didn't do that. He said we just kept the basics, and they've got enough talent to do that. And I kind of figured they were going to run the ball straight ahead at Ole Miss, because of the way Ole Miss's alignment was 3, and they really ran the ball really, 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 really well.
Yes, they did.
So their chances were slim and none.
Listen, let's turn our attention to tonight's guest. Tell us who we got tonight.
Well, we got an old Taylorsville boy, Smith County boy. He went to Mississippi State in 1975 as a student, graduated in 79, and has stayed there basically forever. And his name is David Murray. He's worked in their athletic department, sports information. He's done the Bulldog Bites for him, and now he's in the Bulldog Bites and 2047 Sports 247 Sports for Mississippi State. And so you're talking about somebody that knows Mississippi State, that has been around that university for almost 46 years, I assume, and he's watched a lot of football practice, seen a lot of coaches come and go, seen a lot of players come and go, and in every sport. So he probably knows Mississippi State as well as anybody within the state. So we're honored to have him today as our guest.
Well, we'll get to him in just a moment. But let's take a commercial break to hear from some of our sponsors, and when we be back, we'll have David Murray with us after this break and word from our sponsors.
Do you have any roof damage or missing shingles? Do you need a roof inspection to ensure your roof is functioning properly? Look no further than the roofing specialist Jackson Brothers Construction Services. We are here to service you with affordable prices, amazing customer service, and quality work you'll be proud of. Call us today at 251-295-6442.
The Jackson Brothers Construction Services. They'll do you right. You heard it here first.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
All right, welcome to the show, Dave Murray of is it Dog's Bite or Bulldog's Bite? Anyway, Dave, big win in College Station Saturday for the Bulldogs. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about it since you were there in person?
Well, I was not there in person. I have to be clear on that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Steve Robertson from our site covered it. We kind of split the job up now. I had a stretch of about 22 years where I made every road game, but now that we've got a pretty good team going, Steve decided he wanted to make this trip. And that's one of my favorite road trips, so I hated passing up to College Station in the first place. Good college town, and I just enjoy trips to Texas. But especially now that watching it long distance, a little frustrating not being able to be there in person. But, I'll be at the home games and other road games this year, so more chances to cover, hopefully, Bulldog victories. But I tell you, that was a key one. And by the way, you're checking for the site's name. I work for Gene's Page 24/7. Also, dogsbite.com, DAWGSbite.com. However you want to call it, I still answer any of the names as long as the check clears.
There you go. Okay, I got you that. All right, well, was this the Bulldogs' best game of the year?
By far. And not just because it was a win, but in every sense of the word. The North Carolina State game was solid, though a little closer than it should have been. Given the matchup. And, of course, NC State's made us look better by going out and beating Clemson since then. But easily that was the best offensive, defensive. Special teams had a ways to go. I could have given them a worse grade than I did. I think I ended up giving them a C-, and posters are already telling me no, they need to be a D. But with the starting kicker, Brandon Ruiz, out, I'm not going to blame him too hard for missing a couple field goals in that one. Otherwise, though, Will Rogers, of course, as you saw yesterday morning, was named SEC Co-Offensive Player of the Week, and well-deserved, 408 passing yards, completed, I think, 46 of his passes there, 3 touchdowns, and most of all, no interceptions, no turnovers of any sort. Very good game for the sophomore, who's still very much a development in progress for Coach Mike Leach. Offensive line played easily its best game of the season against a solid Texas A&M defensive front. The running backs, who can't be judged by normal standards in the air raid offense, Jaquavius Marks and Dylan Johnson, they oftentimes are more valuable as pass blockers, as pass receivers, but did their jobs well. And this receiving corps, it had Mekhi Polk been named SEC Player of the Week offensively, I wouldn't have been surprised because 13 catches, 126 yards, 2 great touchdown grabs. Just a really good all-around game. Defensively, not perfectly solid in some areas. I think tackling could have been a bit better, but let's give credit to the Aggies. They were running hard, running aggressively, but State shut down the air game, got a very critical interception on the second play of the game, which really kind of set a tone for A&M, I think, rattled a young quarterback, and just went about their business. So, yes, all summary, it was the best all-around game these Bulldogs have played, and defeating a ranked SEC West team on the road is a really important stepping stone for a team that had lost 2 close games to Memphis and LSU.
Well, you're correct about that. Now, let me tell you, the Bulldogs been a little inconsistent. It seemed like, especially in the Memphis game, which I know was a terrible ending, but in the Memphis game, the offense did not show up for like 25 minutes of the second half, and then all of a sudden it shows up. What have they figured that out yet? Rhyme or reason to why they go into some lapses with their offense?
Well, I can't speak to the rhyme, but as far as the reason, you're still very much a work in progress, as I mentioned. Will Rogers is a true sophomore. Yes, you look around the country and see other freshmen and sophomores succeeding faster with their teams, but that's different systems that put a lot less demands on the quarterback. What he is asked to do is get out there and essentially be a coach on the field. And, of course, Mississippi State came into the year thinking that maybe Jack Abraham, the former Southern Miss quarterback, could be a useful guy off the bench, maybe to spell him or even come in when it was time to teach him or relax him. Well, they don't have that option this year. Chance Loveridge of South Alabama is really the only other option at quarterback at this point. So Rogers is shouldering the load, and frankly, State has not had enough margin either way to get the young guys, Sawyer Robertson and Daniel Greek, out there. Fans are really desperate to see Robertson and Greek play, two highly touted Texas quarterbacks who are true freshmen. But this is real Rogers' team, and what you see in the inconsistency is simply what's going to happen to a second-year guy. He's only played 14 total games and has only started about 11 of those. So he's still learning so much about what to read, what to react, and the comfort factor with his receivers is a huge deal. This may end up being the best all-around receiver corps I've covered at State, and that's going back to 1979, by the way. The 1980 group is great. I'm not going to say they're better than them yet, but the variety of talents, the versatility they have, as they develop, that's an outstanding group, but they have to get on the same page with their passer. And in the air raid offense, it's such a matter of timing, space, recognition, and you may be at the right place at the right time. The quarterback not see you. The quarterback may see you, but you're not looking for him. There are so many things that go on in a full-time passing game that are still developing. Everybody looks back on Leach's first game at State, the blowout of LSU, when K.J. Costello set the all-time SEC passing record. Well, that may be one of the biggest flukes in SEC history because, A, LSU played in their hands, but B, it was not truly indicative of how much this offense had to develop. So now you're seeing them against defenses that know how to drop into mixes of zones and man, rush limited number of guys, play a lot of coverage. State's beginning to pick some of those apart, to find what they can do, and to make plays. But it is far from a finished product.
Well, how would you rate him? A lot of people talk about the Daniels at Georgia as quarterback, Corral at Ole Miss, Bryce Young at Alabama, and I know that but would Rogers? Should we be listing his name and maybe with those other names right now?
Well, statistically, yes. He's leading the SEC in passing yardage. I think 1,454 yards. He's third in touchdowns. But are you going to compare him to seniors like Daniel, who has been injured a lot this season? I saw him in person at Georgia last year when State played and played a really good game. That was Daniel's first game back off his own injury and transfer, and he looked all world. Now, he's been beat up since then a lot, so you haven't seen fully what he can do. Nobody's in the same class with Corral right now. Let's just be honest, setting the rivalry aside, the guy's playing at a different level, as he should, given the level he's at, his age, his experience, his versatility in this offense, his ability to take off and run. Sure, he had a bad first half at Alabama the other day, but, part of that was the decisions they made. I'm not going to, second-guess another coach on those things, but Corral's a different level. And at Alabama, this is the star of the future. He may end up being the Heisman Trophy winner this year as a true freshman, which is unthinkable at one point. I'm sorry, redshirt freshman. But, Bryce Young is that good. But the thing about Rogers, too, he's still learning so much more. He's learning how to work with his offensive line. He is a legitimate top-5 SEC quarterback when he's on the top of his game. But there's so much of his game left to see that anyone who wants to sit there and judge him, okay, this is what real Rogers is and what he isn't, I'd be very foolish to do that because there's so much he has left. I will say this, though, that cowboy hat he got last year at the Armed Forces Bowl, well, now he's gone out to the state of Texas and beaten 2 ranked teams within those boundaries, so I think he's earned the right to wear that cap proudly.
He sure does. Hey, talk a little bit about the receivers and everything. And there's a boy from the local area here, from Laurel, Charlie Cross. Tell us about Charlie's progress.
He is a guy with definite NFL potential. Now, he's also inconsistent. And he, to me, and this is not criticizing him, he would tell you the same thing. He epitomizes in a lot of ways what the transition to the air raid offense has been. Last year, because State didn't get to play any non-conference games till the bowl game, there were no break-in games to develop the linemen in particular. They, as it turns out, missed 2020 spring training far more than any unit, because all these guys were essentially signed by either Dan Mullen or Joe Moorhead to go out and be run blockers first, pass blockers second, and pass blockers in a read option type offense. Now they're being asked to pass, well, not asked, told to pass block in a full-time air raid system where the defenders know you're going to throw passes, 8 out of 10 times. It's an entirely different deal for these guys to be asked to do something. I guess to summarize it, in his great high school days, Charlie could run straight ahead. As a college player, he's got to make his living backing up. You see the difference for a guy. It's a mindset change. It's a physical change. It's a technique change. There's so much technical about pass blocking that fans simply don't understand. And I'll be the first to admit it. I've been covering state football and college sports for 4 decades. If I ever dare tell you I understand what's going on inside an offensive line, I'm a liar, because nobody except somebody who plays it or coaches it really knows. I will say the guy's got genuine NFL potential. He progresses. When he's on his game, he's very good. You saw he was a freshman All-SEC last year. And when teams really commit to pass rushing, to coming outside, he may end up looking bad, but was it his fault? Or did the guard not pick up? Did the running back not pick up? There's so many things involved in air raid blocking that gets laid on the lineman or the quarterback that really isn't fair until you watch and know what, not just what the coach called, but Will Rogers is calling a whole bunch of these plays at the line of scrimmage himself. And that's what Mike Leach wants him to do. And he wants that offensive line, when Rogers makes that call, they have to know exactly what he wants. Running backs have to know. Receivers have to know how to adjust and make things happen. So this air raid is a far, far from finished product installed. But when you see games like A&M, and you see the fourth quarters against Memphis and against LSU, you see what this offense has the potential to be.
They sure do. Well, tell us a little about the defense. I thought they did a pretty good job, the front seven did the other night against A&M. A&M was going to run the ball because of their inexperienced quarterback, I assume, but it seemed like the Bulldogs kind of, just kind of kept the running backs in front of them a little bit.
Yeah, Isaiah Spiller and a Chain, the other running back, they broke a couple of big ones, but that's going to happen. When you run the way they do, especially between the tackles like that. Now, I'll say this. When State was able to close down that perimeter and not let them run those sweeps and tosses, that was a win right there. Because, yes, A&M broke a couple of runs between the middle, but if you make them only do that, run between the hashes, you're going to win more often than not, and State's defensive line did a good job tying up. Now, let's be clear. A&M's offensive line is a rebuilt product. 4 or 5 new starters this year, some guys being switched positions. So State knew it had to win this matchup because they got rattled by Arkansas last week. They had to jump in and pile on them immediately, kind of, hit them in the mouth first. They were successful. The linebackers did a solid job containing. Yes, like I said, they broke a few runs, but that's going to happen. But generally, the linebackers did their job, especially in short game pass protect, coverage as well. I thought the safeties played decently, and I think the cornerbacks had an outstanding game, not just in pass coverage, which they didn't have to do a whole lot, but they really run-supported well. They got out there in the perimeter, made tackles, or certainly slowed down receivers and backs so others could come in and finish the play off. It was just a good, solid, well-called game by Zach Arnett and his unit, and a real confidence builder because they got rattled a little bit by the LSU game, and they played well at Memphis. They really outplayed the Tigers, if not for some fluke situations. They, one that let's not really get too deep into. And by the way, fans out there, since that SEC crew calling the Memphis game made a horrific call on the punt non-return touchdown, they've still been allowed to work 2 SEC games since then. So I don't think a whole lot of discipline's been coming out of Birmingham these days for officials that blatantly mess up. But that's a rant for another time.
There you go. Well, listen, of course, next up is Alabama. And, of course, we just everybody knows how good Alabama is. But as you look past Alabama and the schedule, you've got a couple home games again. Well, you got a road game at Vandy, is that correct? And then you come back
Yeah,
home.
I think that will be a home game in all but geographically, because Vanderbilt, they had to kick a last-chance field goal to beat the worst team in the country of the night. I think there'll be plenty of Mississippi State fans making the trek to Nashville to watch that one, so they'll turn it into a home-away-from-home game.
Yes. And then after that, you got a very solid Kentucky team coming in for homecoming. And then, of course, you got a couple road games at Arkansas and Auburn. Is that correct? But before
Yes, you go to Auburn, and you do play at Arkansas. Always a tough road trip there. But the key to this season is going to be taking care of business at Vanderbilt and getting out without any injuries. And then Kentucky. Kentucky's been a swing game for so many state coaches. This is Leach's second shot at them, and last year, of course, went very badly. The offense just completely fell apart, and Lexington only scored, well, they didn't score anything. The only points scored were on a safety by the Bulldog defense. But Kentucky has been a pivotal game in so many seasons, so many coaches here. It shapes it that way again. Now, they have a tough game this weekend with Georgia, so hopefully the other dogs do us a little favor and soften them up a bit. But Mark Stoops has a very experienced, sound team. They haven't won in Starkville for a very long time. In fact, the last time they won in Starkville, that victory all but sealed the fate of Sylvester Croom as head coach. So the Bulldogs need to come out and defend the home field, take advantage of that. Yeah, Alabama, you talk about everybody knows how good they are. I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. I don't think anybody really knows exactly how good they can be. Right now, I think if they played Georgia and Georgia had Daniel at full strength, I might give them the edge on the neutral field because Georgia's playing at a different level right now, as they've shown. But Alabama is a team that's going to get better as the season goes on. They're really good right now, but they have the potential to get really, really good. So what I want to see about the Alabama game, first, take advantage of this open date week to work on some things. A, get Brendan Ruiz healthy back at place kicker again. Address some of the special teams things that have been falling apart the last couple of weeks and very out of character for a Mike Leach squad. Develop some more depth at the safety and cornerback positions because you're going to rotate some guys in and out. You want to work in another defensive end or two, develop some people there. And offensively, just keep doing what you're doing. Keep finessing things. You've got a win under your belt now. You've had stats before, but as Mike Leach said last week, statistics don't win ball games. Points win ball games. Now you've got some points to go with statistics. You've got some honors, SEC Player of the Week. You've got some guys that ought to have some honest confidence now in what they can do against a good, solid defensive team. So go out, play your game, do what you can against Alabama, let the chips fall as they may, and start preparing yourself for the second half of the season where things like bowl eligibility will be determined.
I got you. Well, listen, one last question, Dave, and we really appreciate your time today. How do you enjoy working with Mike Leach? Is it different from other coaches?
It's been kind of a tragedy from my vantage point as a writer and, former public relations director for state, those kind of things, that we're so limited in our access to Coach Leach. Of course, last year was entirely shut down. Every interview after his day he was signed had to be done at a distance via Zoom call. Now at least we're getting actual press conferences in person with him. And because of once the novelty wears off, and I'll give this press corps credit, we haven't asked a lot of silly questions trying to coax him in to give him those wild and crazy answers that he's done. What you begin to appreciate about Mike Leach that doesn't get a lot of attention out there, he's just a football coach. Off the field, he has incredibly wide-ranging interest. He's a great, fascinating fellow to talk to about things not dealing with football. But when it comes to football, he's all business. Yes, he can come off a little short in his answers, but that's because he just doesn't tolerate silly questions about football. He doesn't want to get trapped into, trying to talk down to somebody with an answer, so he'll be a little bit brief there. But if you ask an intelligent question, which can be difficult, because I've been doing this for all these years, and sometimes I struggle to come up with an intelligent question before or after a game. But if you do, he will give you some really fascinating insights on how the sport of football works, not just offense, but all aspects of it. Recruiting, setting up a team, building a program, building confidence, the things you have to do outside of a team to make a program function. He's a fascinating guy. You really want this to work out for the long term, and not least for the reason, too, that Mississippi State has really bet the future on Mike Leach because his recruiting is going to be built to this air raid offense on that side of the ball. Defensively, any defensive guy out there who wants to play for a hard, aggressive defense, sign up for Zach Arnett. You will be the better player for it because Mike Leach lets his coordinator run the entire show there, and they're going to put you in positions to make plays as well. But he's going to rebuild the roster entirely on the offensive side, so it has to work. And that's the gamble Mississippi State's made. It's paying him $5 million a year. It's certainly investing the time. Facilities upgrades are on the horizon, and even some thoughts about the south end zone at Scott Field. I wrote a couple stories in recent weeks with Dr. Mark Keenum about what's going on there. And by the way, you can find some of the stories, too, on file on genespage.com with Dr. Keenum for those who are interested in how the college football playoff is shaping up, because he is on the board of managers for the college football playoff committee, and they canceled their September meeting because some things are happening that may slow down the eventual expansion of the playoff. But a lot of fascinating things he has to say about that and name, image, likeness. You'll come away with a better academic side, administrative side, understanding that not all of what you hear about playoff expansion or name, image, likeness or the future of the sport that you hear on the sports sites are accurate. Sometimes you have to go to people who actually sign the checks, make the decision, and you start understanding just how much TV is impacting things. Like in your local market. I know Southern Miss is looking at their own future as what conference will they be in as well. You can kind of look at these stories and get a hint of what's happening in college football, not just this year, not the next 5 years, but long term. So some good things to look up in there in general about it. So putting in a plug for our website at genespage.com, and a lot to read. Of course, we also have plenty of, by the way, you may have heard the story, Mississippi State defending national champions in baseball. Fall practice.
I think the word got down here. I promise you.
I was actually down in the Free State a few weeks ago myself, checking my property. I inherited half a farm out there in the northwest corner out in Summerland, so I'm a farm boy from out there. Grew up raising chickens for Sanderson Farms and all that good stuff. But yeah, I was able to wear my national championship shirt and hat very proudly around Laurel, and I was giving my wife a tour of the town as well. So it's a proud moment for the Bulldogs, a story I'd waited 4 decades to write. I finally got to write it, and now Coach Chris Lamonis and team are working already. Scrimmages are being held. We're putting statistics up as the 2022 Diamond Dog lineup starts taking shape.
All right. Well, listen, maybe we'll have you back during basketball season and then later on in baseball. Really appreciate your time, Dave. Thank you so much.
Gentlemen, good to hear from you.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Do you have any roof damage or missing shingles? Do you need a roof inspection to ensure your roof is functioning properly? Look no further than the roofing specialist Jackson Brothers Construction Services. We are here to service you with affordable prices, amazing customer service, and quality work you'll be proud of. Call us today at 251-295-6442.
The Jackson Brothers Construction Services. They'll do you right. You heard it here first.
Welcome back to the Brouhaha. Dale, before we went to David, you said this was a guy that knew a lot about Mississippi State and Mississippi State football. Boy, you weren't just whistling Dixie, brother. He was, what a great interview. You've done it again, Dale.
Well, I tell you what, he went in depth for sure, didn't he?
He sure did. He's maroon through and through, is he not? Nothing wrong with that. Listen, we go back. We started out talking about our weekend a little bit, a lot of what you did, and I was kind of looking around at some of the things I saw from a sports standpoint this weekend, like looking at the headlines and some of the things that stuck out at me. The Oregon Ducks. I was what I've been seeing and what I've been hearing. They had pretty much anointed them the Pac-12 champions and a surefire participant in the college playoff system, but the guys down there at Stanford said, wait just a minute, not so fast, my friend. Did you get a chance to see any of that one?
Not really much. I've always liked Stanford football. I just they're one of those schools kind of like Vanderbilt and Duke, and Stanford, they're
higher learning for sure, through and through.
So I think those fellows there that go to schools like that are very mature, and but Stanford, I go back to the Jim Plunkett days with them. That's a long time ago, by the way. But anyway, I just I think they have a great football program over there. And the Oregon Ducks, tell you what, I had to put my sunshades on one time when I flipped it over because I couldn't understand, was that lime green or green or I don't know,
Another one that caught my attention, and the Gators, Florida Gators getting beat by the Cats of Kentucky. I think we might have alluded to that a little, but I never saw that one coming for sure. Did you see that one?
Well, I knew Kentucky had a chance playing at home.
Can you define that for me?
No,
we're not going to go Dumb and Dumber.
No, I'm not going to go into that. But they have a very solid defense, and Florida's still working through their offense. So they're kind of like David mentioned. Alabama is probably going to be. They might not could handle Georgia right now. It'd be a good game, but he said Alabama's going to improve. And so I think Florida's offense will get a little bit better.
Here's another one that really stuck out to me, and it looks like Cincinnati is making a strong case right now for that playoffs. They went up and beat the Fighting Irish. Now, I didn't see that one coming, but I tell you what, they're looking pretty good.
They are. They have a great chance now. Based on the league they play in and things like that. I'm not saying they play in just a Cape Cup league, but they are going to have some challenges in their conference they're in. But I really believe that they could end up being one of the in the playoffs at the end of the year.
Well, Dale, we talk about this from time to time, about how time flies when you're having fun. I really enjoy doing this with you. It's a lot of fun, and the guests that you keep bringing on. Who do you think we're going to have next week?
Well, we're going to talk a little baseball next week. We're going to talk with Barry Lyons. He played for the 1986 New York Mets, and he's going to give us his thoughts on the upcoming Major League playoffs and the World Series. And he might even talk a little football with us because he had a brother named Kenny Lyons that succeeded Archie Manning as quarterback at Ole Miss. So he follows the Ole Miss Rebels a little bit. So we'll probably get a little football in there too. But Barry's a great guy. He's back living in Biloxi, working for the Biloxi Shuckers now. But he played several years. He's a Delta State guy. Played for Boo Ferris up there and got drafted by the Mets. So I'm excited to hear from Barry.
Well, if you're excited, I'm excited because I know it'll be a great interview. And folks, that about does it for us tonight with the time that we have, but we'll be back next week for more of the Brouhaha with myself and Dale McKee. Take us out of here, Jamie.
Welcome to the Brouhaha with Dale McKee and Marshall Wood. Two sports talking sports with those in the know on the Brouhaha Show.